Sup guys, I'm back with another snarled video. Here we go.
Brad, are you just trying to scare us?
I'm chewing
Do
gum.
you guys see that? Hey, I'm Sapphire. Want to hear something scary?
Yes, I do.
Our next chapter is inspired by an encounter that Maggie and her family experienced. Maggie, her parents, her older cousin Brad, and two friends, Ethan and Angel, went camping at Henry W. Coe State Park in California. It was her first time camping, so she was incredibly excited, but also a little scared. The thought of being out in the open, protected only by a layer of nylon, that's kind of creepy. But her family assured her that she'd be safe, and they would have a lot of fun. People go camping all the time. What's the worst that could happen? They arrived at the park at night and set up their campsite. While her parents went to sleep, Maggie and her friends were still up, talking in their huge shared tent. At about 3 a.m., Brad decided he wanted a little adventure. Hey, have you heard of the legend of China Hole? Ew, that sounds gross, said Maggie. Don't be immature. China Hole is one of the more challenging hikes in the park. Along the trail is a creek. Legend has it, a married couple were walking the trail when all of a sudden, her husband threw her into the creek. He held her underwater until she stopped struggling. She had been cheating on him, and he wanted to end her life. And now her angry spirit still resides in that creek and pulls down any men who look directly into the water. And the weirdest thing is, corpses will appear in the park, dead from drowning, but nowhere near the creek. You're so full of shit, Angel said. Our campsite isn't that far from the creek. Why don't we go find out? Ethan, being the only other boy in the group, was not too thrilled about the idea of visiting a man-hating ghost, but he didn't want to look like a scaredy cat in front of Brad. Let's do it, he said in his most convincing voice. I'm in, said Angel. All eyes were now on Maggie. Brad was always doing stuff like this. He loved messing with his younger cousin. And Maggie knew that if she said no, she would not hear the end of his teasing. Fine, let's go. Lit cell phones in hand, they quietly crept out of their tent and toward the hiking trail. The only sounds in the air were the light crunching of their sneakers on the dirt and a gentle wind blowing. So when a bush rustled, they all jumped and pointed their cell phones toward the sound. They stared in silence, waiting to see if it would move again. It was probably just a lizard or something, Brad said. Let's keep moving. They continued to slowly make their way toward the supposedly haunted creek. Brad suddenly stopped, causing Ethan, Angel, and Maggie to run into him. What are you doing? Shh! Brad was completely still. Brad, are you just trying to scare us? Shh! Do you guys see that? Brad slowly lifted his cell phone higher and higher until, in the distance, they could make out the faint outline of a woman. They all screamed and bolted back towards the campsite. They hastily zipped up the tent and hid in their sleeping bags. Maggie was trying to rationalize what they had just saw. Maybe it was just a shadow that looked like a woman. Either way, she was glad to be back in the tent. Then, she heard what sounded like footsteps outside of the tent. Slowly, she lowered her sleeping bag. On the tent was the silhouette of a woman. Maggie quickly retreated back into her bag. Eventually, she was able to fall asleep. The next morning, Maggie woke up to an empty tent. She heard voices outside, and so she went out to see what was going on. A few police officers were talking to her friends and parents. One of the officers saw Maggie and called for her to come over. Hi, miss. Can you recall anything strange happening last night? Maggie thought about the woman they saw on the trail and the silhouette outside their tent. No. What's going on? We need you to come down to the station. Maggie and her family were taken down to the police station where they all had to take polygraph tests about what happened the night before. After they all passed, the officer told them what was going on. The body of an elderly woman was found a few yards from their campsite. How did she die? Brad asked. All the kids were wondering the same thing. Multiple stab wounds, the officer said. They all let out a small sigh of relief. The legend of China Hole wasn't real. But then, who was that woman they saw in the darkness? Was it the woman who was murdered? Or her murderer? And whoever killed that woman, why did they spare Maggie and her family? Needless to say, Maggie hasn't been camping since. A special thank you to Maggie for providing the inspiration for this story. Like this video if it gave you the chills, and don't forget to subscribe to Snarled and our sister channels HissyFit and Slaytrix. If you or anyone you know have any unique paranormal experiences, send me an email at somethingscary@snarled.com, and I might animate your story. Even if it doesn't fit in with the current theme, it might fit one in the future. And if your story doesn't make it into an episode, tune into my weekly live stream every Wednesday at 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, and I might read it live. If you dare, follow me on Instagram and Twitter at Awkward Sapphire. Until next time, sweet dreams.
I forbid you to go there.
Hey, I'm Sapphire. Want to hear something scary?
Yo, bounce.
For these next 6 stories, we'll travel deep into the darkness, where twisted fairy tales take place and mysterious creatures lurk around every corner. So grab a flashlight and leave a breadcrumb trail as we read our first chapter, a Grimm's fairy tale that I'm sure your mother never read to you. Once upon a time, there was a sorcerer who disguised himself as a poor man, went begging from house to house, and captured beautiful girls. No one knew where he took them, for none of them ever returned. One day, he came to the door of a man who had 3 beautiful daughters. He appeared to be a poor, weak beggar, and he carried a packed basket on his back. He asked for a bit to eat, and when the oldest daughter came out to give him a piece of bread, he touched her, and she was magically transported into his pack basket. Then he hurried away with powerful strides and carried her to his house in the middle of a dark forest. Everything was splendid in the house, and he gave her everything that she wanted.
My dear, you will like it here with me. You will have everything that your heart desires.
So it went for a few days, and then he said to her,
I have to go away and leave you alone for a short time. Here are the house keys. You may go everywhere and look at everything except for the one room that this little key here unlocks. I forbid you to go there.
He also gave her an egg.
Take good care of this egg. You should carry it with you at all times, for if you should lose it, great misfortune would follow.
She took the keys and the egg and promised to take good care of everything. As soon as he had gone, she walked about in the house from top to bottom. The rooms glistened with silver and gold. She had never seen anything more beautiful. Finally, she came to the forbidden door. She wanted to pass it by, but curiosity got the best of her. She examined the key. It looked like any other one. She put it into the lock, twisted it a little, and then the door sprang open. She gasped. A large, bloody basin stood in the middle, filled with the cut-up parts of dead girls. She was so terrified that she dropped the egg in the basin. She got it out again and wiped off the blood, but it was no use, for the blood kept coming back. She wiped and scrubbed, but she could not get rid of the stain. Not long afterward, the man returned from his journey, and he immediately asked for the key and the egg. She handed them to him, shaking all the while as she watched him examine the blood-stained egg.
You went into that chamber against my will, and now, against your will, you shall go into it once again.
He threw her down, dragged her by her hair into the chamber, cut off her head on the block, then cut her up into pieces, and her blood flowed out onto the floor. Then he threw her into the basin with the others.
Oh.
Now I will go get the second one.
And, disguised as a poor man again, he went back to their house. The second sister brought him a piece of bread, and, as he had done to the first one, he captured her by merely touching her, and he carried her away. And everything went exactly as before. She let herself be led astray by her curiosity, opened the blood chamber, and looked inside. When he returned, she paid with her life. Then he went and captured the third sister, but she was clever and sly.
Hey.
After he had given her the keys and the egg, she carefully put the egg aside and then examined the house, finally entering the forbidden chamber. Her two dear sisters were lying there in the basin, miserably murdered and chopped to pieces. In spite of this, she proceeded to gather their parts together, placing them back in order: head, body, arms, and legs. Then, when nothing else was missing, the parts began to move. They joined together, and the two girls opened their eyes and came back to life. Rejoicing, they kissed and hugged one another. When the man returned home, he immediately demanded the keys and the egg. And when he was unable to detect any trace of blood on them, he said,
You have passed the test. You shall be my bride.
he now had no more power over her and had to do whatever she demanded. Good, but first, you must take a basket full of gold to my father and mother. In the meanwhile, I shall make preparations for the wedding. Then she ran to her sisters, whom she had hidden in a closet, and said, The moment is here when I can rescue you. The evildoer himself shall carry you home. As soon as you have arrived at home, send help. She put them both into a basket and then covered them entirely with gold so that they couldn't be seen. Then she called the sorcerer in and said, Now carry this basket away, but you are not to stop and rest at all. Take care, for I shall be watching you through my little window. The sorcerer lifted the basket onto his back and walked away with it. However, it pressed down so heavily on him that the sweat ran from his face. He sat down, taking a breath, but immediately heard, I can see that you're resting. Keep walking. He thought it was his bride calling to him from the window, so he got up again. But moments later, he sat back down, only to hear, I can still see you. Do not stop. Every time that he stopped walking, someone called out, and he had to walk on until, groaning and out of breath, he brought the basket with the gold and the two girls to their parents' house. At home, the bride was making preparations for the wedding feast, to which she had invited the sorcerer's friends. Then she took a skull with grinning teeth, adorned it with jewelry and with a wreath of flowers, carried it to the attic window, and faced it outwards. When everything was ready, she dipped herself into a barrel of honey, cut open the bed, and rolled around in it until she looked like a strange bird, and no one would have been able to recognize her. Then she walked outside and directed the wedding guests to the house. Finally, the sorcerer returned.
You, where are you coming from?
I am coming from Fitcher's house.
What is my young bride doing there?
She has swept the house from bottom to top, and now she is looking out of the attic window. The groom looked up. Seeing the decorated skull, he thought it was his bride, and he waved a friendly greeting to her. After he and all his guests had gone into the house, the bride's brothers and relatives arrived. They had been sent to rescue her. After all the guests had entered the house, the sisters and brothers closed up all the windows and doors and set it ablaze. The sorcerer, together with his friends, all burned to death. Damn, fairy tales are pretty savage. Like this video if it gave you the chills, and don't forget to subscribe to Snarled and our sister channels HissyFit and Slaytrix. If you or anyone you know have any unique paranormal experiences, send me an email at somethingscary@snarled.com, and I might animate your story. Even if it doesn't fit in with the current theme, it might fit one in the future. And if your story doesn't make it into an episode, tune into my weekly live stream every Wednesday at 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, and I might read it live. If you dare, follow me on Instagram and Twitter at Awkward Sapphire. Until next time, sweet dreams.
Shoot. Next.
I thought about you today.
Yeah?
I was at the zoo. It reminded me of you. Love you.
A few.
I placed my finger on the glass ring and waited. Hey, I'm Sapphire. Want to hear something scary?
Thank you so much, Sapphire.
The following is an abridged version of a story posted on the No Sleep subreddit by username Won't Think Straight.
Thanks for agreeing to this, Sarah. Are you comfortable?
Yes, I am.
Okay, why don't we start with how you're feeling right
Numb. Just like every other day. It never gets easier.
now? I understand. What you've been through is tough. Why don't you take some deep breaths and let's start at the beginning, okay? Is that okay with you? Let's start with Tom.
All right. What can I say about Tom? I really miss him, you know? God, I really do. It's the little things, you know? Like when I'd pull some clothes from the wardrobe and his cologne would still linger there. Luke was the only thing that kept me going.
Luke's your son, right?
Yeah, that's right. It was about a year after we had him that we found out that Tom had cancer. He hadn't been feeling well, but he had been putting off seeing a doctor. There was just so much to do in those early years, starting a new life together. The doctors said if only he saw them sooner, they may have detected the cancer earlier. Then it may not have spread. Then it may have been operable. Then he might still be alive. It was hard seeing him waste away. He was so sure that Luke was going to be a sports star like his dad. He couldn't wait for Luke to be old enough for them to throw a ball around in the yard together. By the time Luke was old enough, though, Tom was already too weak to even lift a ball, let alone go outside. He would just lie in bed all day, too exhausted and weak to do anything. Instead of playing sports together, they played pen and paper games. Luke really loved playing hangman, though. He loved guessing letters at silly words or phrases his father would come up with. And he really loved drawing that little hangman figure. He drew that a lot. He was terrible at the game, but it didn't matter. All that mattered was his dad loved playing with him, too. I would sometimes find them both asleep
they
in
wanna
bed
shut up
covered
next
in
door.
paper. Tom would get tired easily and had this habit of dozing off. But rather than wake his dad, Luke would decide it was his nap time, too. He'd crawl right next to Tom and fall asleep hugging him. That day came when Luke woke up, but Tom didn't. When I found them both, he was holding on to Tom, hugging him tightly. He was crying and pleading with his dad not to go. "I love you, Dad. Please don't go. We still haven't finished our game yet," he cried.
And how did Luke handle everything afterward?
He became very quiet and sullen, kept holding on to that paper pad and wouldn't let it go. I once asked him if he'd feel better if we played hangman like he used to with Tom. He just shook his head. To him, it didn't feel right for anyone else to finish it.
But that changed, right? Your report said...
Yes, it changed. About 4 months after Tom's death. Luke bounced back to normal. I just thought it was because children are more resilient, you know? I was cleaning his room one day and found his notepad. I flipped to the last page with that unfinished hangman game. Except he had completed it now. And it wasn't the last game anymore. There were dozens of pages filled with new games of hangman. When Luke got home from school, I asked him about it. He was a bit angry and a bit scared, but he eventually said he'd tell me if I promised not to get mad or punish him.
So, what was going on?
His best friend at school had seen how sad Luke was about the death of his father, so he gave him a Ouija board. He told Luke it was for speaking with the dead, so now he could talk with his dad. Luke told me he had been using it and has been playing hangman with his dad ever since.
How did you react to that?
I didn't know what to think at first. I was skeptical, shocked, horrified, all at once. Part of my mind was flashing warning lights saying it's dangerous to be playing with spiritual forces we don't understand. Another part was saying it's complete horseshit. But all that noise was drowned out by the only question I really cared about. Did it work? I was desperate. I wanted to talk to Tom again so badly, I would have given anything for a chance. So after Luke had gone to sleep, I took out the Ouija board and set it on the dining table. I placed my finger on the glass ring and waited. I whispered, "Are you there, Tom? Please let me know if you're there." Nothing at first. Then the ring started to move. It moved to the hello in the corner. I gasped and let go of the ring. I must have just sat and stared at that thing for like an hour as if it was possessed. Well, I guess it was, kinda. I placed my finger on it again. I asked, "Is that you, Tom?" The ring edged up to the yes in the corner. Where did I get the scar at the back of my head? The scar was hidden under my hair. No one except Tom even knew about the accident that created it. VENICE. My eyes were so wet with tears. The impossible was happening. It was Tom. And we were talking. I told him I loved him and missed him so much. My finger was still on the ring as it started moving. Nomuchtime. What did he mean? Was he trying to say we didn't have enough time together before he died, or that he doesn't have much time before he needs to go again? No, you left us too soon. Luke misses you too, I said. LOOKAFTERLUKE. I am, and I will. It's been so hard without you here, you know? Or are you saying you've been looking after him? Because he says you've been playing hangman with him. I waited for a response, but the ring didn't move. I waited and waited, but it didn't respond to any more questions that night. Eventually, I went to bed. But you know what? For the first time for as long as I could remember, I was actually smiling. It may only have been a few words, but to me, it was everything.
Did you try to contact Tom again?
Of course I did. Every day I could. It was my obsession. IMALWAYSHERE. We talked about Luke and how he was doing in school. We talked about our honeymoon. We talked about the dates we used to go on together. FORYOU. We talked about anything and everything. It was sometimes surreal. Sometimes it was even passionate. There's some funny ones, you know. He once even spelled out,
I watch you shower.
Another time I told him that I didn't want to go to sleep because the bed seemed empty without him.
I lie beside you when you sleep.
It was almost enough to make me go to bed.
Can we talk about what happened that day you found Luke in his room?
Oh, that. Yeah, I guess. That's what this is really all about, isn't it? That's why you're here? I figured we'd get to this part eventually.
If it's not too hard to talk about.
It's fine. I've gone through it 1,000 times before with the police. What's one more? Like I said, I'm numb now. It's still a blur, really. I had finished making dinner and called for Luke to come down. He usually yells back to me to tell me he's coming, but he didn't respond that day. I eventually tired of yelling and went to his room to get him. He was lying face down on the floor. His neck was twisted at an odd angle, and his eyes were staring blankly at the wall. Near one hand was his pad and pen, and the damned cursed Ouija board near his other. I just kept screaming his name over and over, hoping he could hear me. I just held him in my arms. My baby. My poor, precious baby.
What had happened to him?
I was hugging him tight and kissing him. I refused to let him go. Not after losing Tom. I couldn't lose Luke, too. My eyes landed on the pad he was scribbling on. He had been playing hangman again.
You were never alone. I am the hangman.
I had a sickening realization that it may not have just been Tom that I had been communicating with.
You were warned.
At least not after that first night. A sharp chill began stabbing at my heart. The last game at the bottom. A completed drawing of the hangman figure scrawled beside it. It's the last thing I remember. Inside, I'm still screaming, you know? I don't think it will ever end. Like this video if it gave you the chills, and don't forget to subscribe to Snarled and our sister channels Hissyfit and Slaytrix. If you or anyone you know have any unique paranormal experiences, email me at somethingscary@snarled.com. Even if it doesn't fit in with the current theme, it might fit one in the future. Until next time, sweet dreams.
Dad, help!
What's wrong, honey?
I lost Mom!
Where are you?
I didn't see the worried expression when Brandy's mother talked to mine. Hey, I'm Sapphire. Want to hear something scary? Our next chapter is from the No Sleep subreddit, written by username Lana Lona. When I was 9 years old, I had a favorite TV series. It had human actors and actors in animal suits and funny educational clips in between. I don't want to name it because it was a really good show, and this story is not at all a fault of the show. I will just call it The M Show. The M Show was running for years, and I had been watching it for as long as I can remember. I always sat down straight after school with my older sister Scarlett and my best friend Brandy, who lived next door. It was our ritual. Every day, the three of us sat together, and in the breaks of the show, we talked and gossiped about all those important issues in our lives. Then, I remember it was a warm summer Friday. Scarlett found a prize competition in one of her girl magazines. It asked questions about the show, and first prize was a trip with your parents to Disney World. But even better, everybody who sent the correct answers would become a member of the M Show fan club. The same day, after watching the M Show, the three of us huddled together on the couch to answer the quiz. The questions were very hard. They asked details about old episodes of the show. Without Scarlett, Brandy and I would have never managed to answer all the questions. We sent our letters off, and every day we would rush to the mailbox to see if our badges had arrived. Winter came, and when the first snow began to fall, we stopped checking. Brandy was still passionate about the show and watched it every day, but Scarlett gradually lost interest. When Scarlett stopped watching, I too began to skip the show. It was now early spring. I remember there were tulips in the garden, and my mom reprimanded me for plucking a few to decorate the kitchen table. But right after her lecture, she handed me a small square letter with my name printed on it. The back said, "Welcome to the M Show Fan Club." There wasn't much in the envelope, only a short leaflet that welcomed me to the club and a small ID card with my name on it. Brandy and Scarlett both got their letters the same day. From then on, every Friday, each of us received a leaflet about the show with photos and anecdotes and background information on the characters. Occasionally, the leaflets also called on the club members to promote the show and to watch out for the M Show Tour. Ever since we became members, we didn't miss a single episode. Then, in mid-June, we all got 2 leaflets. The first was the usual one with the facts and photos, but the second was an ad. The tour bus is in town. This is your chance to become an elite member. The bus was coming next Sunday to our town. We were all allowed to go. We were beyond excited. The leaflet didn't have much information. This was before we had a computer at home. The tour bus would arrive at 1 p.m., and the main characters of the show would be there to welcome everybody and play games with us. Those that participated in at least 4 games would be upgraded to elite member status and receive a new golden membership card. Those 9 days of waiting for the M Show Tour were some of the longest in my life. Brandy, Scarlett, and I fantasized every day about how it would go. That Sunday, around 12:30, Brandy came running to our house. She knocked on the back door, like she always did, and I let her in. Brandy was beyond excited. Her mom had volunteered to accompany the 3 of us, and she wanted to go early so that we wouldn't miss anything. At 12:45, Scarlett still hadn't shown up at my house. My mom said we should wait for her, but Brandy threw a tantrum. She was scared that she wouldn't be able to hug all the characters if we came late. So Brandy's mom decided to drive. I wanted to go with them, but my mother said that she would drive Scarlett and me. I felt like I was being punished for Scarlett being late. I begged, I cried. Nothing helped. Brandy went alone. Scarlett's parents dropped her off at 1:40. I was mad at her, but my mom said if I made a scene, we wouldn't go at all. I relented. We arrived around 20 minutes later at the big parking lot where the bus was scheduled to stop. We saw the crowds from the distance, parked the car, and walked over. They all held the M Show Tour flyers, but it looked as if the crowd were mostly parents. They stood in a half circle towards the edge of the parking lot. Some of them looked concerned, but most of them were laughing and talking. My mom spotted Brandy's mother at the other end of the half circle, so we walked over to her. Brandy's mother was one of the worried ones. She told us that the bus had been there, together with all the animal figures from the M Show. They had a large bus with the M Show logo, and they handed out sweets. One of the animal figures had explained to the parents that they had built a set outside of town where we all could make our own short film with the characters of the show. They said they would drive everybody there. They took the children first. They were all so excited that few parents objected. The next bus was supposed to arrive within a few minutes to bring everyone to the set. When I heard that, I was excited like never before. I ran to the street to look around so I could be the first on the bus. I didn't see the worried expression when Brandy's mother talked to mine. I didn't understand why the police came not even an hour later. In Monday's episode of The M Show, one of the characters came on stage and told us to call our parents to watch the show. Our mom was already sitting with Scarlett and me. The characters said that the M Show didn't have a fan club. That week, Brandy's parents cried a lot. I was still sure that Brandy was okay. I thought she just had so much fun that she didn't want to come back. She must have had a lot of fun, because she never came back. Brandy's mother cried even more that Friday when the small parcel arrived. There was a new The M Show fan club membership card for Brandy. It was golden and said elite member in big bold letters. The parcel also contained a video. It was only a minute long, a minute of Brandy at the set of The M Show. She was wearing the same dress as when she came over to our house that Sunday morning. In the video, Brandy was smiling. An actor in a big animal suit stood next to her, silently.
"Hi, Mom. I really like it here,"
said Brandy.
"I really wish you could be here."
Then she laughed.
"I'm sorry the others were late. I'm sure they would have loved it too."
Like this video if it gave you the chills. And don't forget to subscribe to Snarled and our sister channels Hissy Fit and Slaytrix. If you or anyone you know have any unique paranormal experiences, DM me on Instagram or Twitter at Awkward Sapphire and I might feature your story. Even if it doesn't fit in with the current theme, it might fit one in the future. And I do my best to read and respond to everybody, so please be patient with me. Until next time, sweet dreams.
Next. So this is the thing that makes the video slow, the longer, because of the ads.
It makes me happy when you make art. Hey, I'm Sapphire. Want to hear something scary? Have you ever played the infamous one-man hide-and-seek?
Nope.
Or owned a toy that hosted a spirit?
Nope.
What about Three Kings or The Devil's Mirror?
Nope.
This volume is all fun and games until someone gets hurt. Stories about people who've played around with the supernatural. Stories about playtime gone wrong. Our first chapter comes from Brooklyn, who owns a very unique stuffed bear. When Brooklyn was about 3 years old, she was diagnosed with a very serious heart problem. The doctors were always in a panic, horrified that her death would come any day. Brooklyn would constantly overhear nurses talking about how worried they were about a little girl. She thought that they might have been talking about her, but Brooklyn's mom calmed her down and reminded her that there were lots of patients in the hospital. Though it didn't help that whenever her nurse came into her room, her eyes were red and wet, like she had just been crying. It always made Brooklyn nervous. What was wrong? The night before Brooklyn was to undergo surgery, she asked her nurse, "You're always crying when you come in my room. Why?" The nurse froze. She slowly bent down and whispered in her ear, "You will understand when you see her." At the time, Brooklyn didn't know what that meant. The surgery was a success, and Brooklyn now had a new heart. Being a young girl, she couldn't quite yet grasp the gravity of what she had gone through. It didn't even cross her mind to wonder where this new heart had come from. She was just happy to be alive and well. Before she left the hospital, her nurse gave her a small stuffed bear and told her to take good care of it. Years had passed, and Brooklyn was now about 8 years old. She loved to draw and would sketch cute and happy characters like Winnie the Pooh and Dora the Explorer. But one day, while she was drawing, she heard a voice. It wasn't malevolent or scary, but rather calm and peaceful. "It makes me happy when you make art." It was faint, but Brooklyn knew that the voice was coming from the bear. She knew how crazy it sounded, but there was no doubt in her mind that there was a spirit living inside of it that wanted to be her friend. Her name was Rosalita, and she would talk to Brooklyn all the time, and Brooklyn would talk back. The problem was that no one else could hear Rosalita. Brooklyn's parents became concerned that their daughter was always locking herself in her room and talking to herself. But Brooklyn didn't care. Rosalita had become her friend. Brooklyn continued to draw pictures for her to make her happy. And Brooklyn believes that Rosalita helped her become a better artist. Rosalita would guide Brooklyn's hand on the paper. It was like she was a part of her. But Rosalita became tired of the childish drawings. "You need to make real art," she said. She told Brooklyn to walk outside into the yard where she found the bones of a dead mouse. "Turn it into art," Rosalita said. "Bring meaning to its death." So Brooklyn took the bones and glued them on a piece of paper, with Rosalita instructing her each step of the way. She hung it on her wall, and to this day, it's still there. It always made her parents uncomfortable, so they would always try and take it down. But whenever they would take it down, they would get sick the next day, and Brooklyn would hang it back up. Did Rosalita have something to do with that? For the most part, Rosalita was always sweet and kind, but there was something odd that happened a few times that concerned Brooklyn. When their first family dog died suddenly, Brooklyn was heartbroken. Rosalita, however, was the opposite. "Now we can spend more time together." And in the span of a few weeks, her other family members' dogs unexplainably passed away. Did Rosalita have anything to do with that? Brooklyn is now 19 years old and still speaks to the stuffed bear that hosts Rosalita's spirit. "Do you remember the nurse who gave this bear to you?" "Yes, I do." "She was my mom. She was always crying because I wasn't doing well. I was staying in the same hospital as you." "Did anyone ever tell you where your new heart came from?" "No." "You are my art. Your life brought meaning to my death." Brooklyn began to cry. "Thank you so much. You're so important to me." "But," Rosalita continued, "on your 21st birthday, I have to go." "What do you mean?" "I have to move on." "Oh, why?" Rosalita paused. "I just have to go. And I'm bringing my heart with me." "Does that mean that I'll..." Rosalita didn't say another word and wouldn't answer Brooklyn whenever she brought it up again. What did Rosalita mean by that? Guess she'll find out in 2 years.
Want to see something scary live? Check out the video in the description below for more information on how you can demand your city.
A very special thank you to Brooklyn in Missouri for sharing your story and photos with me. What do you think about Brooklyn's experience? Do you think by having Rosalita's heart, she somehow became psychically connected with her spirit? And do you think Rosalita is a good spirit or a bad one?
Bad.
Let me know in the comments. Like this video if it gave you the chills. And don't forget to subscribe to Snarled and our sister channels Hissy Fit and Slaytrix. If you or anyone you know have any unique paranormal experiences, DM me on Instagram and I might feature your story. Even if it doesn't fit in with the current theme, it might fit one in the future. And I do my best to read and respond to everybody, so please be patient with me. Until next time, sweet dreams.
Last one.
Finally go. Hello, everyone. We're live. Zizi, say hi. I got Sapphire's baby with me right now. Today I am going to be. Hello, we got people. Yeah.
Bye.